Hello, and welcome to another KRAD COVID reading. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, here with part 2 of our week of Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet. These are my cycle-urban fantasy stories set in the lovely city of Key West. These stories involve scuba diving, rock and roll music, Norse gods, folklore, and beer drinking, not necessarily in that order. I've already read a bunch of others throughout this reading. I did William Did It, Ragnarok and Roll, and I believe I'm Sinking Down. And on Monday of this week, I did Run for Your Life. This time I'm going to be doing a story that I originally wrote for one of the BAD-ASS FAERIES anthologies. The fourth one, which was called It's Elemental. There were 4 BAD-ASS FAERIES anthologies, that were edited by Danielle Ackley McPhail, L. Jaggy Lamplighter, Lee Hillman, and the other one, Jeffrey Lyman. Sorry, Jeff. And they did 4 anthologies. I did a Dragon Precinct story for the first one, which I've read previously. That was House Arrest, I think. I read that. And for the fourth one, which was subtitled It's Elemental, I did this story, which was also reprinted in Ragnarok and Roll, Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet, which has the first 9 Cassie stories. And I'm hoping, I'm currently working this week, this is why I'm doing these readings, working on another Cassie story that I did through Indiegogo, which is called Ragnarok in a Hard Place, which will be the title story of the next collection. You can still support that on Indiegogo, by the way. If you go to my website at DeCandido.net, there's a link at the bottom of the page to that, so you can still support that particular crowdfund. Anyway, without further ado, here is Undine the Boardwalk. It's an open-air bar. Can someone please explain to me, in words of 2 syllables, why the hell we can't smoke in there? I barked a laugh as I heard that complaint from the circle of people huddled outside the entrance to Mayor Fred's saloon on Green Street, puffing away on their cigarettes. I was approaching that entrance, and the gathering of the Smokers Union told me 2 things. 1, I wasn't late for the start of 1812's set, because their keyboardist, Jaina, was one of the nicotine hounds, and 2, Larry was in one of his moods again. Larry was short, and not just the way lots of people look short to me because I'm a 5'11" woman, but, I mean, his head came up to my boobs short. With a thick white beard and an unruly shock of white hair, which was barely held in check by a Tampa Bay Rays ball cap and a sloppily tied ponytail. Replace the Rays cap with a cowboy hat, and he could play the lead in the biopic of the life of Walter Brennan. I understand why they don't want people smoking in enclosed spaces. Secondhand smoke makes everything smell like a chimney something died in, and so on. I understand that. I really do. But this place doesn't have a roof. Yes, the pool tables are enclosed, so don't let people smoke there. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. He puffed on one of his menthols and caught my eye. Hi, Cassie. Hey, Larry, I'd ask how you're doing, but your rant covered most of it. Next to Larry was Paulo Jimenez, who kept the cigarette between the fingers of his prosthetic hand, the acquisition of which signaled the end to his career as a local bar musician. He ran the soundboard at Mayor Fred's these days. This way is so much better. I always hated coming home after a gig with all my clothes smelling like smoke. Come on, Jimenez. Jaina exhaled smoke into the humid Key West air. You smoke like a fucking chimney. Your clothes smell like smoke whether you come home now. Paulo shook his head. I don't take up smoking till I stop making music. The last of the 4 was Mira, the goth waitress, who pulled her cell phone out of her apron and hit the button to activate the screen. I gotta get back inside. Cassie, you want your pint? I nodded. Please. She looked at Larry. You ready for your coffee, or is it still Coke? Larry considered it while puffing down the last of his cigarette. Nah, keep it on Coke. I'll go hot a little later. I shook my head. Larry was the textbook definition of regular. I'd never gone to Mayor Fred's when Larry wasn't either at his usual spot at the back corner of the bar, at a pool table hustling tourists, he called it educating, in the bathroom, or out here smoking. But he never drank alcohol. It was always either soda or coffee, the latter with a metric ton of sugar added. I often wondered how he ever slept. I still got my mojito, Paulo said. Mira just rolled her eyes and went in through the entrance that had a giant fish hanging over it. She didn't ask Jaina for her drink order since she was part of the band, and they were taken care of directly by Ihor, the bartender. I should probably head into... I started toward the fish. Jaina dropped one cigarette onto the ground and stepped on it, while simultaneously taking out another to light. Oh, hey, Zukav, could you do me a favor? I stopped and turned to look at Jaina. I guess. My guy's coming to see us tonight. Jaina's voice lowered, and she actually sounded shy. You have to understand that shy is pretty much the last word anyone would use to describe Jaina. Could you keep an eye on him, making sure he has a good time while we're on stage? Okay, I said, more confused by Jaina's tone than her request. Who is this guy, anyhow? I'm telling you, Zukav, this guy's the one. His name's Russ, and he's just... Paolo rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Larry adjusted the bill of his cap. We just got her to stop talking about this fella. Jaina snorted. Yeah, by listening to your sorry-ass piss and moan about indoor smoking. It isn't indoor smoking! There's no roof! Anyway, Jaina said with a glare at Larry, Russ is just awesome. I really think he's the one. Like Alfredo, the previous the one. Alfredo had lasted all of a week. Paolo put in, or Christian. I added, or Jelani. Or that funny-looking one with the bad hair, Larry said. I grinned. Isn't that all of them? Fuck you all. Jaina shook her head. Look, I know I ain't got the best track record ever, but this guy's seriously awesome. Larry looked up at Paolo. What's the difference between awesome and seriously awesome? Paolo shrugged. For me, it means he puts out on the first date. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Larry made a face. Key West had as many gay people per capita as San Francisco, so I never understood how an island lifer like Larry could have such a problem with homosexuality. It was the mention of the actual sex between same-gendered folks that squicked him, not gay people themselves, given that he was friends with Paolo and Igor and Adina, one of the other waitresses. Regarding Jaina with amusement, I asked, so, when do we get to meet this hunka-hunka burnin' love? Jaina looked past my shoulder and broke into a huge grin. Right now, Russ! Russ! She started waving with both hands, her lit cigarette gadding dangerously about. I turned to see someone who, I swear, was tall, dark, and handsome. He had perfectly combed dark hair that was barely affected by the Key West winds, yet had no evidence of product. As the owner of a rat's nest of blonde curls that usually needed garden shears to untangle, I was jealous. He had lovely hazel eyes, solid jawline, cheekbones you could cut glass with, and perfect teeth when he smiled. Something about him made me feel more than a little nauseated, and what my Uncle Harry used to call a queasy feeling in his gizzard. Hey, baby, he said as he leaned down to give Jaina a very long, very deep kiss. Get a room, I said when the kiss threatened to go on into the night. I also had to resist the urge to punch him, and I wasn't entirely sure why. Oh, sorry, Jaina said sheepishly when she came up for air. Sheepish is another word I would never use to describe as an adjective to modify Jaina. Russ, this is Cassie Zukav. She's 1812's biggest groupie. I suppose I deserve that. Hi. He offered his hand, and I returned the shake, noticing a smooth, firm grip and uncalloused hands, and a sudden urge to grab his wrist and break his arm. I swallowed, quickly letting go of the handshake, but damn! I am most assuredly not a violent person. I wouldn't even know how to break someone's arm on purpose. But something was just off about this guy, and not just because he made Jaina turn goofy. Is that something you can make a living at, being a groupie? He asked with a lovely voice. I considered and rejected several retorts, but decided to tamp down the revulsion and play nice. Sadly, no. I work at a local B&B and also at C-Clips, one of the local dive shops. Same place Bobby and I go to dive, Jaina added, referring to her bandmate and oldest friend, 1812's guitarist, Bobby Admilewski. I'm a bit of a diver, too, I said. Maybe I'll check your place out. After introducing Larry and Paolo, Jaina practically dragged Russ into the entrance under the fish. Come on, you need to meet the rest of the band. Okay, baby. Nice meeting you all. Russ called back as he let Jaina guide him in. The three of us stared after them for a second or two. Paolo broke the silence. I would totally hit that. Larry winced again. What do you think, Cass? I totally wouldn't hit that, I said honestly. Or maybe I would, but with my fist. And there's the violence again. Sheesh. Of course not, Larry smiled. Your young man's already in there. I assumed that meant that Rance Demetrigian was in the bar. Before I could reply to that, Paolo got a wolfish grin. Fine by me, I ain't needing the competition. Larry stared at him. You do remember what happened with Mickey and Perla, right? Hey, I saved her a lot of grief. Ain't like he was gonna tell her he pitched for the other team, too. What do you think, Cassie? Larry asked me. Well, the last person who used awesome in her presence got a 10-minute tirade about how stupid and overused that word is, and the last person to call her baby got kneed in the groin, so I'd say it's true love. I shook my head, but I don't like him. I don't know, Larry said. I kind of like the cut of his jib. Both Paolo and I stared at him. You know, I said, I don't think I've ever heard anyone use that phrase in real life. Let's go inside. Paolo dragged on the last of his cigarette and stomped it out. I need to see more of him. I felt I needed to see less, but didn't say anything. Thing is, this wasn't just me not liking the guy Jaina was dating. I've always been kind of a weirdness magnet, finding strange-ass shit and knowing things I shouldn't know about and so on. Recently, I learned I'm one of the Disir, a fake goddess. I found this out from, of all people, the king of the Norse gods. Yes, really. This means I notice things that other people can't even see. Looking over at the table near the ficus tree that Mayor Fred's was built around, I saw Rance Demetrijan sitting there, nursing a pint. I hadn't been sure that Rance was going to make it. He's a special agent with the Monroe County Field Office of the FBI, and his ability to make it to Mayor Fred's depended on his caseload. Rance was also a diver. We'd actually met at Sea Cliffs and started hanging out at Mayor Fred's together. Larry liked calling him my young man because, well, he was weird like that, but the truth was I had no idea what we were to each other. Yeah, we hung out at Mayor Fred's and went diving together, and yeah, we could talk for hours about pretty much anything, but we never actually kissed or been on a date. Though I had seen him naked when he was almost killed by a Nixie. I mean, I'm at the same table at Mayor Fred's from Thursday to Sunday night, regardless of whether or not he is, and he's not always, since work keeps him busy. And as for Sea Cliffs, that's him hiring me to dive with him. That's not a date. The evening rolled merrily on, 1812 playing their usual 3 sets, an impressive range of rock and roll cover songs, some famous, some obscure, all hard rockin'. While they played, Russ sat at the bar not far from Larry's seat, charming the shit out of everyone. At one point, when it was particularly crowded, Rance went up to get fresh beers for both of us, since Mira was a little too crazed dealing with a group of needy, drunken tourists. Rance stood near Russ and Larry, and it took about a year for him to get back to the table as he was talking to Russ. Now, to be fair, Rance can babble, but Jesus. Thought I was going to die of thirst, I said when he came back with the 2 fresh pints. Alcohol dehydrates you, so it's not like this is going to help all that much. You probably should have asked me to get some water from Ihor too, though that probably would have meant I'd have had to take 2 trips, since I think we all remember the last time I tried to carry 3 drinks. It's a figure of speech, pedantic boy. I chuckled and sipped my beer. So what were you and Jaina's new beau talking about? Rance shrugged. Just talking about how much he liked it here. Said he's been all up and down the Florida coast, but this is the place he likes best. He and Larry are getting along remarkably well, too. Usually it takes Larry a week or so to get to liking someone. Tell me about it. He wouldn't even talk to me for the first week. Well, that's because he thought you were a tourist. And, to be fair, you were one then. I nodded while sipping more beer. My plan had been to visit Key West for a week or 2 before going back home to San Diego. That was almost a year ago now. You okay, Cassie? Rance sounded concerned. Shaking my head, I said, I don't know. There's something about Russ I don't like. Is this a Dees thing? Rance and Bobby both knew about my unexpected second life as a fake goddess. It wasn't something I told everyone, but they were the 2 living people I was closest to these days. I don't know. I think so? Any chance you can check him out? I'll stop by the office tomorrow morning and run him short. As soon as he said that so casually, I got nervous. This won't get you in trouble, will it? If I get caught, yeah. And if anyone else had asked, I wouldn't do it without it being part of an investigation. But your instincts tend to be pretty good on these things, so we'd better check them out and be sure. Besides, we don't have any big cases pending, so a Saturday morning would be pretty quiet. It'll be fine. If I find anything, I'll tell you about it at the dive. I smiled. I was running an afternoon dive at Sea Cliffs tomorrow that Rance had signed up for. So had Bobby, actually. Thanks, Rance. By the time 1812's third set started, Russ had made friends with pretty much the entire bar. Even Chet, 1812's bassist, said a whole sentence to him. Hell, it took me 4 months to get a second word in sequence from Chet. Which just kicked up the queasy gizzard again. Rance wasn't just being flattering when he talked about my instincts. After all, the last time I didn't like someone that everyone else adored, he tried to destroy the world. When the final set ended, Rance had already gone home. Jaina and Russ had left before Teardown, which earned a grumble from Bobby. Then again, Bobby and Jaina hadn't been on the best of terms lately after Jaina temporarily left the group for another band. They'd probably get over it. They'd been friends since they were little kids, but it made things a mite awkward. After the happy couple left, I went over to say goodnight to Bobby. Can you believe this shit? She said without preamble as she latched her battered black guitar case shut. This better not be the start of a new trend. The drummer, Ginny Blake, chuckled. Come on, Bobby. She's in love. Cut her some slack. I added, yeah, Tall, Dark, and Perfect probably wanted to get her home for the post-concert booty call. Nah, it's Jaina's fault, not Russ. He's a good guy. How much of this stemmed from my bad feeling about Russ, and how much was Bobby still being pissed at Jaina, I couldn't tell. But it annoyed me that even Bobby had fallen under this guy's spell. And I was genuinely worried that it was an actual spell. Changing the subject, I made an offer. I can help haul stuff if you need it. Years of carrying air tanks around had given me the upper body strength that was greater than that of the average 5'11" Amazon. Nah, we got it. See you at Eclipse tomorrow? You bet. As I left, Larry was, of course, the only one still sitting at the bar, with only the remnants of 1812, Ihor, Paolo, and the two waitresses left besides him. I headed to the Botroff house, the bed and breakfast where I not only worked, but also lived. I got a good night's sleep, woke up at 11, and managed to pull myself together enough to get to Seacliffs on Stock Island, the next island in from Key West, in plenty of time for the afternoon dive. Bobby and Rance were already there, and suited up by the time I pulled into the driveway in Rocinante, my ancient Ford F-150 pickup truck. It was just the two of them for the dive, so we hopped onto Chico, one of Seacliffs' 3 boats, and hit the Gulf of Mexico. Once we were far away from the coast and any prying ears, Rance said, "So I ran Russell A.L. Kamen." 2 middle initials? I only didn't roll my eyes because I was steering a boat. How pretentious is that? Bobby put in before Rance could continue. You ran Jaina's boyfriend? I asked him to, I said. There's something about him I don't like. After pausing for a second, Bobby said, okay. Now I hesitated. You okay with this, Bobby? Jaina's still my best friend, even if I totally want to rip her face off right now, and if you don't like him, he needs to be checked out. And this was why I told Rance and Bobby about being a Dees. So what kind of horrible person is he? Rance shrugged. Born in Florida to Ann O. Kamen. No father listed on the birth certificate. Though Ann was married to someone named Lawrence St. Joseph, but they split up 9 months before Russ was born. Even money, he's the father and may not even know it. Anyhow, they live on a boat that's been docked all up and down Florida, which tracks with what he was telling me last night about how he's, well, lived all up and down Florida. He smiled. I didn't. That's it? Another shrug. No criminal record, nothing stands out. He and his mother hire the boat out for tours and things, and their tax records indicate that's the source of their income. Not that it's much of a living based on those records, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of their clients pay cash and it doesn't get reported. I pounced on that. You can investigate them for that, right? Rance just stared at me. Seriously? Every tour boat in the state takes money under the table. It's really not that big a deal. Not worth the paperwork an investigation would generate, especially once I get to the part about my probable cause. I knew that, of course, but I was grasping at straws. Maybe he's just a jerk you don't like, Bobby said. But he isn't a jerk. Hell, even Larry and Chet like him, and they don't like anybody. That's what worries me. We got to the spot where we were going to dive. Or, rather, they were. Since it was an odd number of people on the boat, I didn't have to go down, since no certified diver would go down without a buddy. And I suddenly didn't feel like it anyhow, preferring to stay up top and brood about Russ. Unfortunately, brooding was all I could do. There was nothing legitimate on him, and I couldn't go to Jaina with, I don't like him. For one thing, that was what I had said about all her other 900 boyfriends over the last year. For another, she didn't know that I was a Dees, and I wasn't about to tell her now. Discretion had never been Jaina's strong suit. This went on for 2 weeks. I went to Mayor Fred's and brooded. Russ had a grand old time chatting everyone up. 1812 rocked the house, and Jaina got more and more attached. That last part was really creepy. Every second she wasn't on stage, she had her arms around it. She didn't go outside to smoke, she didn't help with setup or teardown, which was making Bobby crazy, and she giggled. Okay, I've only known Jaina for a year, but giggling? Not in her lexicon. This is a chick who pretty much defined cynical goth, complete with the stringy hair, black nail polish, cigarettes, and bitch please attitude. She not only didn't giggle, she routinely mocked people who did. Finally, one Sunday night between sets, Bobby came up to me and said, "We have got to do something about this." What did you have in mind? Flailing her arms, Bobby cried, "I don't know! Do whatever Dees thing you do!" I flailed my arms right back, mocking her a little. I don't even know what that is! Seriously, this didn't come with an instruction manual. Shaking her head, Bobby looked over at where Jaina, Russ, and Larry were chatting away like they'd known each other forever instead of less than a month. Come on, Cassie, you stopped a dragon, a Nixie, and the end of the world. You can't stop this? I opened my mouth and closed it, helpless. I had no idea what to do. Each of the occasions Bobby mentioned, I was either being given explicit instructions or it was easy to figure out what to do. Bobby didn't even know about the thing Rance and I found in the Gulf of Mexico, not to mention that sea monster back in San Diego. Russ and Jaina wandered off, and Bobby and I went up to the bar to refresh our beverages. While Ihor poured my pint and prepared her screwdriver, Larry said, "Cassie, where's your young man tonight?" I rolled my eyes at the phrase. Off on a case. It sucks, but at least he gets overtime. Maybe you two can take more dives together. Bobby waggled her eyebrows. Oh, please, it's not like those are dates. Bobby looked at Larry. When it's me, Rance, Cassie, and someone else, she always buddies up with him. Always. I glared at her as Ihor handed me my pint. Right, because the conversation is so scintillating when we're underwater. Well, I think it's high time you two started having a proper courtship, Larry said. I mean, just look at those two. He was pointing at Jaina and Russ, who both had big smiles on their faces as they approached the bar. Jaina was holding up her arm and waving her hand back and forth. Look at this! Stop moving your hand so fast and maybe we can, I said with a smirk. She held her hand right in front of my face, and I saw a diamond ring. This on a woman who'd never owned a piece of jewelry that didn't have a skull on it. We're getting married! Jaina squealed, a verb that had also never applied to her. Based on the look on Bobby's face, she wouldn't have applied it either, and she'd known Jaina since they were 6. Seriously? Ain't it great? That's wonderful! Larry had a big grin on his face. He raised his coffee mug. To the happy couple! Screw that. Russ walked up to the bar and slapped a credit card down on the bar. Everyone gets champagne on me, Ihor. That got a rousing cheer from everyone in the bar. Well, except for me and Bobby. We exchanged worried looks. Ihor whipped out 2 bottles of champagne, the popping corks echoing off the walls, and started pouring into plastic cups that he kept around for occasions like this when he didn't want to create 3 dozen dirty glasses all at once. Everyone took a cup, with the exception of a couple of tourists who chose that moment to walk out, another tourist who'd been there all weekend and had been prominently displaying his 1-year chip from AA the whole time, and Larry. Russ didn't even pay attention to the AA tourist, instead looking at Larry. Come on, man, how often does a guy get engaged? Happened to me twice, and alcohol puts me right to sleep. Ihor laughed. Dude, we got a cotta right in the back. Look, just take my word for it, all right? Larry was angry now. I don't drink, and I won't drink. Not for you, not for anybody. Ain't worth the risk. Russ glared at Larry for a second before turning his back on him. Fine. Everyone else raised their glass. I am marrying the most beautiful woman in the world, and I hope everyone except this asshole is happy for me. I will give Jaina this much. Being stupid in love didn't do anything to diminish her musical ability. The last set of the evening was some of 1812's best. Jaina was a music teacher for kids during daylight hours, and she was damn good at it. For the band, she played keyboards, guitars, mandolin, and accordion, all of them incredibly well, plus she sang lead on about 1/3 of the songs. Tonight, her playing was just superb, and her junkyard growl on vocals was amazing. It was enough to make me cry. Unfortunately, her attitude was making Bobby cry. After teardown, she just looked at me and said, M's. M's was an all-night eatery on Duval Street that catered to people who were kicked out of the bars at 3 a.m. and wanted to nosh on something before bed. I actually was desperate for sleep. I'd had 2 dives that afternoon, and they'd been rough, but the look on Bobby's face indicated that she needed to have words. We ordered a large basket of conch fritters with fries. M's made the best fries in the Keys, and 2 coffees, and sat across from each other. We gotta do something, Cass. I mean, Christ, married? I nodded. Okay, maybe we talk to his mom. How are we supposed to do that? While popping a fritter into my mouth after dipping it in M's special sauce, I said, Rance knows where their boat's docked. We just go in and say hi. Okay, well, what do we ask her? Why is your son a weirdo? I pretended to think about it. Maybe we should be more subtle. How? Call it a hunch, but I don't think we'll come up with a good game plan at 3 in the morning after 10 beers and 1 glass of shitty champagne. I only had 4, but yeah, I see your point. Fine, we'll talk tomorrow at Sea Clips. The next day, at Sea Clips, I walked in to see both Rance and Bobby all in their neoprene outfits. Bobby stood with hands on hips, looking frighteningly resolute. After the dive, we go to the boat. I frowned. What boat? Rance turned to look at Bobby. You told me this was entirely her idea. That was how you sold me on this. It was her idea! Then she turned to stare at me. Right? I shook my head. Bobby, what are you talking about? I'm talking about going to see Russ's mother on their boat. The previous night's conversation burbled forward from a haze of beer. Yeah, okay, that was my idea, but I thought we weren't going to do anything until we figured out a game plan. Primly, Bobby said, I have a game plan. We go in and ask her what's wrong with her son. I put my head in my hands. No, that was the plan we came up with while drunk, and we both agreed we'd need something more subtle. We will be subtle. Her son is marrying my best friend, and I'm going to be the maid of honor, which means I need to consult with the mother of the bride to plan shit. I frowned. Jaina asked you to be maid of honor? Bobby looked down at the floor guiltily. Well, no. If she did ask, I'm not sure I'd say yes. Jaina quit the band. Again. Because, and I quote the voicemail message she left this morning at 8 a.m., I want to devote all my spare time to my sweetie pie. She called him her sweetie pie? Bobby nodded. I blinked. Wait, she called you at 8 a.m.? Again, Bobby nodded. She was conscious at 8 a.m.? I know, right? Yeah, this is dire. Rance raised a hand. Okay, I haven't been following this with any kind of comprehension, but I agree that Jaina's behavior could charitably be described as odd. There's something extremely peculiar going on here, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Talking to his mother seems like the proper next move. As usual, Rance summed up in 50 words what anyone else would say in 10. Let's do it. We had a fourth for the dive, a tourist whose name I never got, and I pointedly went with Bobby as my dive buddy just to shut her up about how I always dive with Rance. Afterward, the tourist thanked me profusely and said he'd definitely come back to see clips the next time he came to the Keys. I kind of brushed him off, which wasn't my usual style, but now that we had a game plan, damn it, we were going to execute it. We decided that taking 3 vehicles was silly, so after we changed out of wet neoprene into dry t-shirts, shorts, and flip-flops, we hopped into Rance's FBI-issued Prius. Rocinante and Bobby's Corolla would be safe in Seacliff's parking lot. Rance took us up Route 1 to Sugarloaf Key, where Russ's boat was currently docked. When we arrived at a dock on the southern end of the island, Rance pointed at a battered houseboat that had seen better decades, with the word Rusalka etched on the prow. But then he said, it's that really nice one in the middle that we want to go to. I frowned. Next to the dumpy one? Bobby asked, what dumpy one? There went my gizzard again. The one called Rusalka. You know, someone with a truck that looks like yours really shouldn't go casting aspersions. That's a great boat. I didn't respond because I saw someone come out onto the deck, though someone may not have been the right word. She didn't so much walk as flow out of the boat's interior. Her pruny skin was a kind of puke green, halfway between the prettiness of teal and the dullness of chartreuse, and that skin was covered in seaweed, jellyfish, and sand, with shells all throughout her long, stringy brown hair. She wasn't actually wearing any clothes, though the crap all over her body covered her up some. Her face was wrinkled, and she had just an awful, sour expression. Dark green, water-soaked wings grew out of her back and drooped down to her knees. They didn't look like they'd help anyone get airborne, but maybe they helped with swimming. Look at that, Bobby said, staring in amazement. Now I know where Russ gets his good looks. I shot Bobby a glance. What? I'm finding myself in total agreement with Bobby, Rance said. She's amazing looking, even without accounting for her advanced age. Rance, of course, had seen Russ's birth certificate, which would have included the mother's age, but now the queasy gizzard was on overdrive. Okay, Bobby, describe her, right now. I'd get a better description from Rance, but it would also take half the afternoon. Tall, blonde, beautiful, perfect skin, great smile. If I had that figure, I'd wear a string bikini too. Plus, it's a glamour, I said before she went on. I'm guessing she's some kind of water elemental or something and uses the glamour to make herself look like Anne Kamen. Bobby winced. Shit. It's Loki all over again, isn't it? I nodded. Loki had used the glamour to get people to like his rock band enough to give him the power to cast a spell that would destroy the world. This was a more traditional glamour, making someone, and something, in the case of the boat, look good. Luckily, one of the cool side effects of being a Dees was that glamours don't work on me. The creature finally noticed us and called out. Can I help you? Her voice was actually quite mellifluous, with just a hint of an accent, enough to sound exotic without being incomprehensible. Since that was what I heard, it had to be natural. Add the visual Bobby described, and she could probably charm the pants off anyone. I saw Rance reach into the back pocket of his shorts to pull out his badge, which was sweet, but probably wouldn't get the job done. People responded better to badges, at least sometimes, but this wasn't a person. You can start by dropping your glamour so my friends can see you for what you really are, and then you can tell us what your kid's up to. She just stared at me for a second. Interesting. My glamours are strong enough to affect even documents and electronic records. Yet you are immune. I'm one of the DCR. I had no idea if that would mean anything to her. Hell, I'd never even heard of them until Odin came around, but I figured she should have some kind of explanation. Holy shit! That was Bobby. And I gathered from that, and the look of sheer revulsion on her and Rance's faces, that she had, in fact, dropped the glamour. I assume, Dees, that my son has seduced a friend of yours, and you wish to release her from his spell? I blinked. That was a little too easy. Yeah? And my name is Cassie. That idiot! The wings started to quiver, and her hands clenched into fists. He'd promised me he'd stop seducing humans. Where is he? Rance glanced at both of us. This boat is listed as his place of residence. It's possible he's with his new fiancée, but we need to ascertain whether or not he was... The elemental, or Anne, I guess, strode off the deck and past Rance. We must go to him. I have wreaked enough havoc in my time. I will not allow him to carry on my legacy. I shook my head. Okay, then. I assume, Cassie, she said as she walked past me, that you have a ground conveyance of some sort? You will take me to where my son is. Bobby looked at me. I looked at Rance. Rance looked at me. I shrugged. I guess we're going to Jaina's place. Hang on, let me call her, Bobby said, pulling her phone out of the front pocket of her shorts. After a few moments of touchscreen fondling, she put the phone to her ear. Hey, Jaina, where you at? Really? I thought you quit. Okay. I'm with Rance and Cassie. We just finished our dive. We'll meet you there. Great, bye. She tapped her phone screen and pocketed it. She's at Mayor Fred's. Russ called an impromptu engagement party. Engagement? That fool! Anne shook her slime-encrusted head. Take me there. Bobby and Rance suddenly stopped looking like they were going to throw up. Rance said, Don't you think you should put something else on that's a bit more appropriate to the setting? Snorting, Bobby said she wouldn't be the first MILF in a bikini to wander into Mayor Fred's. We are wasting time, Anne snapped. If you care about your friend, you will make haste. And even if you don't, I care about my son. I will not see him subjected to what I endured. We piled into the Prius and headed back down Route 1 toward Key West. After a few minutes of what could charitably be called tense silence, I asked, What exactly did you endure? She hesitated for long enough that I was on the verge of asking you the question again when she finally answered it. The curse of our kind is that any relationship between us and a human dooms both us and the human. I did not learn that lesson until after I became his child, sadly. That didn't bode well for Jaina. So Russ's father is human. Yes. I'm guessing he takes after his old man in the looks department. If he'd been using glamour the way his mother did, I'd have seen through it. But, queasy gizzard notwithstanding, Russ looked human. Late afternoon traffic in Key West is never fun, and Route 1 was down to a crawl by the time we crossed onto the island. At my suggestion, Rance cut over Palm Avenue to Eaton Street to park the Prius at the Bottroff House. Mayor Fred's was only a short walk from there anyhow. Even then, going on foot meant we had to weave our way through the college students and tourists who choked the sidewalk, many of whom gaped openly at Anne. But it was still faster than the stop-and-go traffic that the cars were stuck in on Duval Street. At Green Street, we turned left. I had the longest legs of anyone present, so I pulled ahead and walked in to see a bunch of people gathered around the bar. Jaina, Chet, Paolo, Adina, the only waitress working this afternoon, a few others I didn't recognize, and Ihor behind the bar. At the center of it all, though, were Russ and Larry, and they were staring each other down. Larry's ponytail had come loose, and his raised cap was on the floor next to his stool. Russ was holding a plastic glass in front of Larry's face and screaming so much he was spitting. It reminded me of the way my father and my twin brother Paul got when Paul fell off the wagon. "What is wrong with you?" Russ cried. "Just have one damn drink." Okay, maybe not exactly like Dad and Paul's arguments were. As soon as she saw me, Jaina ran over. "Zukav, you gotta help me. Something's really fucked up with Russ." Before I could explain that she didn't know the half of it, Anne strode in behind me. "Russell, stop this right..." "Lawrence?" Russ stared at Anne. "Mother? Anne?" Larry was also staring with a look on his face I'd never seen before. I'd been coming to Mayor Fred's 4 times a week, mostly, for almost a year, so I honestly thought I'd seen everything Larry's face could do. Until now. He looked like the happiest guy in the world and the saddest all at the same time. Which was when it all clicked in my head. "I don't believe it," Larry whispered. I never thought I'd see you again. Nor I. Anne's voice had gotten even more imperious, amazingly enough. I did not expect you to survive this long. I ain't gonna if this jackass has his way. He is not a jackass. I'm sorry. He's not a jackass, I said. Well, okay. He is a jackass, but he's also your son. Almost everyone looked at me funny at that point. I figured I should explain. Russ's birth certificate didn't list a father, but his mother was married to Lawrence St. Joseph. That's you, right, Larry? He didn't answer me, instead just looking at Russ. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. It's true, isn't it? Russ sneered. Yeah, well, don't start expecting Father's Day cards, asshole. I'm not. Larry turned to Anne. Why didn't you tell me? You had already left me, and your fate was sealed before I realized I was with child. I frowned. What do you mean his fate was sealed? It's our curse, Russ said. If a human leaves one of us, then that human dies the minute he falls asleep. And when I found out that my dear old dad wasn't dead yet, I had to make sure that he finally got what was coming to him. And then the rest of it clicked into place. Larry's sugar and caffeine obsession, his alcohol avoidance, and why he didn't seem to have a life. Except for one problem. I regarded Larry. How the hell are you still alive? Oh, I'm immortal until I fall asleep. That's the fun part. Been sitting at this damn bar since Hemingway was a regular trying to keep awake. Shit. That was Jaina, and with that one syllable sounded like herself for the first time in ages. So what, if I don't marry you, I'm gonna die when I go to sleep? No, baby, no. Russ's voice got gentler, and he walked over to her, cupping her hand, her face in his hand, a gesture that was suddenly a lot creepier. No, it's only if you leave me, but you'll never leave me, right? Jaina seemed helpless, the latest in a series of emotions that didn't really fit on her. What's the problem, baby? I put myself between the two of them. Maybe she doesn't find patricide a turn-on. She will not leave my son, Anne said. I was about to object strenuously, if futilely, since I didn't really have any way of stopping her, but then she went on. My son will leave her. No, Mother, I have to finish what I started. Anne walked up to her son and put both hands on his shoulders. It looked ridiculous to me, since she was all seaweed covered and smelling of muck, and it probably looked just as ridiculous to everyone else seeing her in a string bikini and looking hot as hell. Lawrence knew his fate. And if he has found a way to postpone it, then he deserves to continue to live. Larry snorted. Call this living. He'd retrieved his raised cap and was putting it back on top of his unruly white hair. If he wishes to end it, all he need do is lie down and close his eyes, and the curse will run its course. It is not for us to determine when that will happen. Plus this poor girl. She glanced at Jaina, who looked confused, angry, and sad all at the same time. She will be as miserable with you as Lawrence was with me, and she will eventually leave you as he did, and as all humans who have made the mistake of falling in love with our kind do sooner or later. You must release her, or condemn her to the same fate as your father. Russ stared at his slime-caked mother for several seconds, then looked at Jaina. I guess I should take the ring back. You must ask for it, Anne said before Jaina could respond. If she gives it back to you of her own volition. Shrugging her arms off, Russ said, All right. Jaina, give me the ring back. I don't want to marry you. Jaina stood with her mouth open for a second or two. God fucking damn it. She practically ripped the ring off her finger. If that's what you want, fine. Take your fucking ring back. He said nothing but accepted the ring. Anne turned to Jaina. You will not emerge from this unscathed, young woman. Never again will you have a love as strong as this, and forevermore you will long for my son, but he can never be yours. Jaina pulled a cigarette and stuck it out in her mouth. Yeah, well, sounds like what my love life was like before anyhow. She turned her back on the Caymans and walked outside to light up for the first time in a week and a half. No, she didn't walk out, she stomped. And Jaina had possibly the worst posture in the history of the world, but instead of her usual slump-shouldered shuffle, she walked stiffly, her shoulders rigid. Bobby, tears welling up in her blue eyes, went after her. She moved to put an arm around Jaina, but she shrugged it off. I was about to join them when Anne stopped me. Thank you, Cassie. Were it not for your ability to see through my son's lesser glamour, this might have had a bad ending. She led Russ out of the bar. Russ cast one last pissed-off glance at Larry as they exited, turning left toward the boardwalk. They were probably going to swim home. I looked at Jaina, who puffed angrily on a cigarette, her life having been turned upside down half a dozen times in the past 2 weeks, and whose already ridiculous love life had just gotten worse. I looked at Larry, who was just as miserable, seeming very much like a person coming around to the notion of going to sleep and never waking up. I looked at everyone else in the bar, who were utterly confused by what they had just seen. Yeah, because this was such a happy ending. The end. Again, you can find that story in Ragnarok and Roll, Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet. It was also in BAD-ASS FAERIES, It's Elemental, although the publisher of that book is no longer functioning, so you might have trouble finding it. But one never knows. And again, it's here, which is available from Plus One Press. And you can also check me out online, DeCandido.net. There's a link there to support my latest Cassie story, which is called Ragnarok in a Hard Place, as well as a Dragon Precinct story called The Gorvangan Rampages. Check that out. You can read my blog at decandido.wordpress.com. You can support my Patreon at patreon.com/KRAD. And you can... I forgot the other thing. Oh, yeah, I support the Indiegogo. I said that already. I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you very much, and please stay safe.